Hello and welcome to Simple Life Philosophy. I'm your host, Ed Raby. This is the channel where I take you along on my journey in exploring a philosophy of life, the possibility of this philosophy of life that is both simple to understand and easy to execute. Um, just a quick reminder to like and share and subscribe to the channel. Do the things that you do on YouTube to make this algorithm hum. We passed our first goal of 50 subscribers. We're on our way to our second goal of 100. And then after that, 250, 500, and then 1,000. So each milestone is well appreciated. Thank you very much. Pardon, my voice is a little bit weak today, so I'll probably turn the volume up on the old videos even more. I think that's been part of the problem is my own throat's been having a few issues with the springtime and the allergies and stuff like that. So hang on there and try to listen well. Today I want to talk about a comment from one of the subscribers. I think got me inspired on this idea of, and it's happened more than once, and some other people have mentioned it in other places. It's like, aren't you Stoics like trying to get rid of all emotion? And a lot of the myth about that actually comes from Star Trek, and particularly the character Mr. Spock, because Gene Roddenberry mistakenly believed that Stoics were trying to rid themselves of all emotions, and it was his misunderstanding of Stoicism that led to the creation of Mr. Spock, who is a beloved character of mine, probably my favorite character in all the Star Trek series. I watched it when I was a little boy and continued to enjoy it well into an adulthood and throughout all the movies, and even the next gen was okay. After that, I kind of get iffy with the whole thing. But Mr. Spock was always this character that had no emotions per se, even though he was half human, half Vulcan. And he was trying to purge himself of emotions. And his whole philosophical idea was to not have an emotion, to base everything on logic. And we get to the first movie, I believe, and he points out to Kirk that, I think it's V'ger is the main antagonist in that one, Voyager, whatever. And he grabs Kirk's hand and says, "This is what V'ger can't understand, is physical contact, this thing, touch, friendship, the emotion behind friendship." And so you see kind of Spock giving up his quest to purge himself of all emotions, but realizing that maybe that's not necessarily the best idea. And I would agree with that the Stoics kind of agree with him. I think the real misconception comes from Mr. Spock, and that becomes a lot of people's view of Stoicism. Or if you have, there, I think there's a few phrases about certain groups of people being very stoic, meaning they don't really have a lot of emotions. As a person who can mask my emotions real well and do a lot of things, you could also say that there's a misnomer between those of us. Some of us who follow Stoic philosophy don't necessarily get overly emotional. But it's not that we don't have them or see their value. I think what we have to understand here is what the Stoics are saying is, let's focus on what we can control and what we can influence and not dwell so much on that which we cannot control or influence. And as we try to, put things under our control and our influence, we're going to put our passions behind it. We're going to put our emotion behind it. I mean, if you decide to have a loving relationship with another person, you're going to put your passion and your love behind it. It's not going to be a loveless relationship. Okay, if you're planning on marrying this person and settling down and having kids and all this other stuff, there's definitely a passion that you have for that. And what the Stoics are saying is, yeah, you should put your love behind that, and you should put your passions behind that, because that's something within your control, or at least something within your influence, and you should be able to pour your emotion into those things. Or if you have a certain passionate pursuit, you should pour yourself into that. Okay, you should put your passions behind that. And that's not bad, because if this is something that you can control, it's something that you can influence, then yes, you should put your emotions behind it and go for it, and nail it. Because passion has its place, emotion has its place, love has its place. Even hatred can have its place. If there's something truly detestable that you hate, Yeah, it has its place. I think the real issue, though, is the Stoics have a problem with emotion for no purpose. For instance, I think that's why I did a video back a ways about being offended. I just couldn't find a purpose to being offended. I mean, if you're not going to take that offense and do something with it constructive, like persuade your opponent or use reason to persuade your opponent. Remember, Stoics are also a big one for reason over emotion. And it's not that they don't want emotion in it to provide passion and stuff, but they're trying to build a better society through reason, okay, and not necessarily emotion. So being offended is not a rational thing, but saying, hey, there's something wrong with that. Let's put our heads together and figure out a way to get past this problem and have a solution. Or, we don't know what the truth is. Let's have a passionate pursuit of what the truth might be. And so those are all positive things. I think one of the examples that stood out to me, there's a couple things I struggle with personally. One is unrequited love, okay? And the Stoics will sit there and say, you're still loving that which is beyond your control to love. They don't love you in return. You really need to find a way to give this up because it's not within your control, and you're wasting your passions trying to love somebody that doesn't love you in return or isn't going to reciprocate that love in return due to the situation. You would be better off holding back that emotion and finding somebody that you can love and will get love in return. That's kind of what they're talking about. They're not getting rid of emotion. What they're saying is emotion needs to have a rational purpose, and there needs to be a rational responsibility for your emotions. Like, I'm really struggling, with unrequited love, but I also struggle in expressing my emotions constructively. It's an autistic trait, I guess, and I'm trying my darndest to figure out constructive ways that'll present my emotions so people know how I'm feeling. Because I think when one of the things I've run into most of my life, because I haven't been able to express my emotions very well, is people do treat me like Mr. Spock, like I don't have any emotions, so they can say and do whatever stuff that they wouldn't necessarily do to anybody else. I mean, I spent 20 years in the ministry and learned very painful lessons about what people will say and do to pastors, for instance, without even caring what the emotional repercussions is. And then I had the added compound problem of appearing not to be very emotional, okay? So you have to find constructive ways to express your emotions, if nothing more than to let people know you care and have some empathy. And by doing that, then that allows you to influence or control the situation. And I think that's the thing. I don't think the Stoics are devoiding us of emotions. They don't have any. What they're saying is, you need to be thinking, okay, does this emotion, does this passion, does this love, this hate, whatever, have actually a constructive end? Is it going to do anything positive in the end? And is it going to help society in the end? Is it going to help me? Is it going to help my family? What are we trying to do here? Okay. And what they're saying is you can have a lot of emotions, but you can waste, view it as emotional energy, if you will. You only have so much you can spend. But if you're burning out your emotional energy on something that you're not going to end up doing anything good, then you're kind of like, you're missing the point. You're kind of missing the point of Stoicism. But if, on the other hand, through that pain or whatever that you go through, you decide to figure out something else to love. Like in my case, I have like 2 former loves that are unrequited. And every once in a while they get in my head and I'm like, oh man, what if, and all this other crap. And I'm now, because I follow Stoicism, I get to a point and I say, this is kind of wasting my emotional energy. And then I have to turn it and I say, okay, what should I be spending? Okay, I want somebody to love, right? The old Queen song. Can anybody find me somebody to love? And I said, what I need to be doing is putting my energy and passion into finding somebody to love me, to love and be loved in return, into that instead of worrying about the unrequited loves, okay? That I can't do anything about. What I can do is search for somebody to love. I can search for somebody that's going to love me in return. That's, if that's what you want in your life, and you think or that will make you happy, then that's an okay pursuit, and it's a good thing to put your passions behind. it's when you don't really, you're just pining on about stuff. I mean, one of my great struggles in my life was after my father died. And the grief of that was so heavy, okay, so heavy. And I now know, looking at it from a more autistic lens, that what happened is that was such a significant event in my life that it caused my nervous system to just shut down. I had so much depression, but there was no help from my nervous system because it was just too much for me to handle all at once. And it took me, God, probably 2 years to get out of that. Okay. And when I finally did, it was through coping mechanisms like exercise and, writing and things like that. I started to write, started to blog, and lo and behold, I started to get better. And that's me learning the Stoic way of putting my energy into something. I can't love my father anymore. I can't put my arms around him. I can't hug him, but I can go out and sit down. And my dad, near the end of his life, started to get physically fit. The doctor basically told us after he died it was a little bit too little too late. And that kind of stuck with me. I said, well, out of love for my father, I'm going to try to get back in shape. I'm going to try to be the athlete that I was in high school, okay, and train and do that kind of thing. And it kind of turned my life around. And then I thought, I need to write, I need to do something with these feelings, and I would start to write them. And lo and behold, I got better. And that's, I think, the idea what the Stoics are trying to get across. Find a way to shift your emotion. You're not Mr. Spock, okay? You have emotions. They're okay to have. Okay, I have to tell myself it's okay to have an emotion about this. It's okay to feel something, okay? But what the Stoics are saying is take responsibility for that emotion. Find ways to express it that are constructive and both maybe reach another goal. Put passion behind another goal. And I think that's the real key that I'm learning in Stoicism when it comes to emotion. And is why I've embraced it, because I think from I had already embraced it before the possibility of being autistic, and now I look at it and say, well, would that reinforce my autism? And then after a while, think about, no, it actually calls me to be responsible for my emotions, to learn how to express them and move forward. And I think that's just been a very enlightening experience for me, and Stoicism is something I've grasped onto. And so when I have a bunch of comments, oh, aren't you trying to be like Mr. Spock with no emotion? No, that's not what we're trying to do anymore at all. We're trying to be the Mr. Spock maybe after the first movie or after the fourth, that has friends, that has emotions, that understands that there's two sides of himself. There's the logical, regional, rational Mr. Spock, and there's also the human side of him. It's a very good metaphor. I think he's a very good metaphor for what I'm trying to explain today, if you understand the Star Trek series. And then that human side that can feel friendship, that can clasp hands with Kirk and McCoy and say, hey, we're friends, and so on and so forth. It's that feeling of it, that wonder of it. And, there's a wonder to emotion and a real gloriousness to passion when it's focused and it has a purpose instead of just kind of being there. And this has really helped me with a lot of things. Like even when I get sad, it's like, I'm sad and I'm trying to figure out what I should be sad about. What's the purpose of this sadness? And it's like, well, maybe it should motivate me to get into a position where I'm less lonely and things like that. That's Stoicism to me. Now, maybe in the comments, some of you can say, oh, you're kind of wrong. You're kind of right. I always appreciate feedback on these videos. I'm not coming out here as a guru who knows everything. I'm not coming out here as a guy who thinks he's got it all figured out. Okay, I'm 54 years old and I'm still in the fog half the time, just like everybody else. I think you have, as a human being, if you haven't developed some humility by the age 40, you have a problem. Okay, because by that time you should realize there is a whole crap of things you're never going to know, and you're going to have to rely on other human beings to know them, and just trust them. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. I appreciate everybody who comes by and likes, shares, subscribes, does their thing, get your notification bell, comment. Anything that helps the YouTube algorithm, I appreciate. You guys are great. Some of you subscribers are really good at commenting. Thank you very much. But I just appreciate everybody. But I hope you've enjoyed this little discussion on what emotions and Stoicism has to do with each other. using the example of a Star Trek character known as Mr. Spock, one of my favorites. So I thank you once again for stopping by. This has been Simple Life Philosophy. I've been your host, Ed Raby, and I'm wishing you a great day as you search for your own philosophy of life. And I'm hoping that it's simple.